Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. You are listening to a podcast by Pastor Eric Deepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. If you enjoy Faith Over Breakfast, we encourage you to rate it on the Apple Podcast app, on Spotify, or Google Play. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. My name is Eric Deepen, and I am pastor of the Village Church in Tucson, Arizona. And across from me is Andy Littleton, pastor of Mission Church in Tucson, Arizona.
That's right. Yep.
And we are back in business.
Back in business. Been a little bit. We've had some out-of-town or busy stuff. Eric went rogue last week with Mark from the Village. And
we went rogue.
Talked about worship music.
At least I didn't just do a monologue.
That's true. It wasn't a monologue. Yeah, that's actually what I expected. When I turned it on, I went, Eric's monologuing. Nope. Didn't do it. And today here's the topic we were jumping into is what are the big things we're preaching right now, kind of a checking back in. We got into all kinds of good stuff. As I always say, stick around because I think it gets better and better as it goes, honestly. Right? And
a little homage to the last episode.
A little homage.
Right, very good.
And there was a challenge to see if I'd listened. And
there was.
I think.
Yeah.
I've proven that I did.
You did listen.
I did.
All right. So also stay tuned for our promotional.
Yes.
It's a promotional, so you got to listen.
You got to listen.
Yeah.
Got to listen.
All right. Well, thank you, Andy.
Absolutely.
All
Good
right.
to be with you.
Yeah, anyway, welcome.
Hey.
It's good to see you back from Montana.
It's good to be back from Montana. That is where I was. You all in the last episode weren't very clear on that, but that is where I was. And Mark talked about how great Bozeman's supposed to be, and that's where I was. I was in
you were in Bozeman.
Yeah.
Was it as great as it's chalked up to be?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What was the weather like?
So they've been in a drought actually all summer,
Wow.
unlike us, opposite of us. And I believe because we drove through Utah and stayed at the home of some of our folks who had just moved to Utah. And it rained there for the first day this summer, the day we arrived. And I believe the next day when we arrived in Montana, it was raining for the first day there. And so that was us. We were the deciding factor. We're the rain bringers.
Which is a rare thing for Arizonans. We don't usually have that ability.
I know.
We bring drought.
I know.
Wherever we go.
It was raining here when we got back, and I just figure there's something special about us. That's about the only conclusion I can come to.
There is something special about us.
You can decide what that special thing is.
Yeah.
So, we went to Montana. It was wonderful. They've been unseasonably warm, but the rain came in. It cooled off just a little bit. There was enough non-rain time to have a great time, but it rained a little bit, and it was nice. We loved it.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you're back and ready to go.
I'm back. Yeah. I'm ready to leave again. Ready to go.
Oh.
No, that's not quite true. No, it was refreshing, and I'm glad to be home. It was good to be back at church on Sunday, and we missed 2 weeks, which is very strange. Not normal for me.
Not to be at your church for 2 weeks.
Yeah. It's not
a weird experience, isn't it?
It is. But nice to know that you can do that. I remember when I could not do that.
Yes. Yeah.
Or didn't feel like I could.
You had to plan everything around Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah, not happening anymore.
Yeah.
That's cool. So our podcast, which I always preface this with you don't care.
Yeah, I don't care.
But our podcast seems to be increasing in listenership.
Yeah, who cares?
And he doesn't care.
Yeah.
He just likes to hear himself talking to a mic is what he loves.
Doesn't
He
matter.
comes every week to talk into the mic.
It's just for me.
It's therapeutic. But I had an idea. I thought, why don't we do a little promotional? We've never done a promotional. We've had this podcast for 4 years, maybe even longer. We're getting close to 200 episodes, I believe. So we should see, maybe we can bring on some big time theologian or social influencer.
Ooh, influencer. That's Taylor Swift. You think?
Maybe Taylor would
talk. The Kardashians.
Kardashians.
They were probably about ready for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kanye. Maybe we can get Kanye to come be on.
Yeah. Hey, did you listen to his listening party of the new album?
Is it really good?
Where are you at? It was interesting.
We've been following Kanye, and I kind of dropped out of that. I enjoyed his last album, and I listened to it a bunch, and then I just stopped listening to it. But
Right. And since I've been on vacation and not scouring the interwebs, I believe that album is still not out.
Oh,
but he did this listening party you had to tune into on Apple Music.
Okay.
And it was I think it was Atlanta, in a dome, and it was packed. And it's a different album. That's where I heard it.
Cool. I'm interested in listening to that.
Anyway,
we want to do a little promotional. You're an author.
Yeah.
You are an author.
So are you.
A best-selling author.
Well, it's the best when they sell. Yeah,
Yes,
that's the best.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you have a book entitled what?
The Little Man.
The Little Man.
And that is a travel memoir in which I am reflecting on the life of my father and meeting other people and thinking about the ways that my life was shaped. And then I co-authored a book called Part-Time Pastoring, which is about being bivocational.
Right. So you're not just a single book author, you're a double book author.
Double.
That's pretty cool. So I thought, well, let's do a promotional. Let's give 5 of these books away.
Of which one?
Let's just give 5 of The Little Man.
Okay.
Because, there's probably less pastors listening to. There's probably more people who'd be interested in your story.
Sure.
Yeah. So here's how this little giveaway promotional will work, and is that you will email us at faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com. So faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com. And the first 5 people to email us will get a copy of the book. So you got to give us your address and your zip code and your name.
Now, you've made a caveat to this.
Yes,
that
I have.
You cannot go to the Village Church in Tucson, Arizona, or Mission Church in Tucson, Arizona to participate.
Right.
You cannot. Yeah, because you already know us and all about us,
Yeah.
and you're not just tuning in from we want to hear from listeners outside of our community.
Right.
And can I just add that if you have a topic you'd like us to discuss, you listeners who are interested in a book, to go ahead and send us that while you're at it.
Yeah. So we're looking for people who don't go to the Village and don't go to Mission Church to send us an email, and we'll send you a book.
And you know why we're doing this?
And this is a signed copy.
Oh.
We're gonna.
Wow.
He's got to sign it. He'll sign it.
Well, that makes the shipping process a lot more complicated. Now it's got to be shipped twice, dude. Wow, we are really being generous now.
Yeah.
This is generosity to the next level.
So you don't just have 5 copies laying around.
I do not, Eric. No. This is the new world of print on demand, my friend.
Oh.
But Eric loves shipping.
I'll order 5 copies of the book.
Yeah, there you go.
And then I'll have you sign them.
Okay. Man,
we'll sign them live on air.
Oh, you can hear the pen.
Yeah. And, and maybe we'll get Andy to say a few nice words about you, even though he doesn't know you.
Yeah, that's a lot easier to do, frankly. Yeah. It's a lot easier to say nice words about people we don't know.
That's true.
And same goes for when you don't know us. It's so much easier to say nice things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This is good.
This is good.
Yeah, I'm in. I'll sign the books.
This is the deal. We're done. All right. So we're really looking forward to this. All right. So I guess here we are. I don't know.
So now
that's the podcast.
Now
it's a promotion.
Thanks for joining us. Well, we have been apart for a couple of weeks.
We have.
The truth is, if you go back one episode, you'll hear the way that Eric really wants to do this podcast all the time. In which he joined Mark from the Village and talked about worship music at the Village, and it was beautiful. I could tell. I could envision the sparkle in your eye during that. It was a joy to listen to. It was good. I was like, here's Eric. He's flying high. He's loving it. It was great. I wasn't there to hold you back. I could feel a little existential angst sometimes in the podcast. A little, Andy's not here. And I liked it. Honestly, yeah, it was good.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad you enjoyed the podcast.
Yeah. I will. I'm going to admit something right now.
What?
I listened to 2/3 of it while not showering, and 1/3 while showering, and I may be a little fuzzy on the third while I was showering.
Well,
So
yeah. So you missed. Well, you didn't miss Mark doing an imitation of you.
ooh, maybe I did.
You did.
Maybe I missed
did
that.
it. He did an imitation of you.
How did it sound? Did he?
I'm
Can he
gonna
get
give it.
real nasally?
No, I mean I'd give him like a 6.
Okay.
It was.
What was I doing in this imitation?
He was just. He was saying some of your buzzwords, words that you tend to say a lot.
Oh,
Yeah,
Oh, I better go back
like
and listen to that.
Bisbee
Bisbee. Okay.
and a few other things.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah. So before we bore everybody,
Yes, that is coming soon.
right
Let's
at this
jump in.
moment, they're typing emails. So.
15's hitting the 15-second button.
Yeah.
So let's move on. So we are supposed to every once in a while talk about things we've been preaching.
Yeah.
You and I haven't been chatting. This is the first time we've seen each other in weeks. Right
It
now.
has been.
So what have you been talking about at the village, Eric? What's the big topic?
The gospel of well, no, not the gospel. 1 John. We are working our way through 1
First
John.
John.
And this last week was the first time I got to preach on it.
No, really.
So we were already all the way into chapter 2, second part.
Oh, look at that. So you took a break from preaching until last week. I hadn't preached for a while until last week. So we are both in this re-entry phase.
Yeah.
So what in 1 John was the big thing? Do you, when you've taken a break, do you have a lot to share when you come back? Or do you feel like you do? I deal with this.
It's a little weird to share a book with people and preaching, or a letter, I guess is a better way of saying it, and you're not introducing it.
Oh, right.
And you know that we've talked about themes, but that kind of evolves out of things as soon as people start really laying things out,
Right.
and so you sort of have to go with the flow.
Right.
And so I don't know. Like it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
I have to kind of come to grips with what's being said in the community so far, and and how do I shape part of it, the story. So I don't know.
How do I not completely contradict what was said the week before?
I do not agree with everything else everyone. Yeah. No, I enjoy the break to do other things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
But I really like preaching. And honestly, if I could get rid of all of my other duties, I'd just preach.
Yeah.
I love preaching, and I would like more time to study and preach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't feel exactly that way, but I do enjoy it too. I think I like other elements of what I do as well, but that's interesting. Yeah. When I come back, I do feel the need to make sure I'm tuned in with what was said before. And I do struggle to keep it succinct. That's the truth. And so we're in Galatians 4. I did 3:29 through 4:7. And this is just, there's a lot in there about the role of the law. And there's this metaphor of a Greco-Roman household with a son, an heir, and a slave within the house. And it felt like there was just a lot to unpack as to what this metaphor was teaching. And it was exciting to do. And I hope it all came through. That's what I was up to on Sunday.
You were unpacking Greco-Roman household codes.
Yeah.
And ways of being.
Legal statuses and so what in the world do we do with that information? And yeah. Basically, the big idea is your relationship to the giver of the law changes your relationship to the law itself and leads you to ask different questions.
Cool.
Yeah. There you go.
And what was what's the carry? What am I going to walk away with? What am I going to do?
Well, I think in our circles, I don't know about yours, but there in in the circles such as Mission Church, in which there's a solid group of people in our church that grew up in church and are a little jaded about some stuff. And so there's a lot of them have latched on to this we're not under the law but under grace idea, and therefore have just lost interest in the Old Testament. I think I've noticed that. I've just and even kind of recoil at anything that might feel like a rule of life. I would say, this would be the right thing to do. And so the big takeaway is when to me was, and I think coming from this verse, when you have a relationship, a familial relationship to the God who gave the law, you don't look at it and say, what do I have to do to be accepted? You look at it and say, this has come from the mouth and the hand of the one who loves me. How do I please him? What benefits are in there? What beautiful things are there? And I think that makes sense of Psalms like Psalm 1 and Psalm 19 and Psalm 119 and these great songs of the church that delight in the law and talk about how it's a blessing. And so it's so to work out, hey, if you've had this experience of the law where it's, am I accepted? Yeah, that's not a great relationship. It really is crushing. It can lead you to good things, actually. Some guilt and shame in your life can keep you from doing bad things. It has a role. It has a role in the lives of people who don't believe in the Bible, who still live by some of its principles. It has a restraining effect, but it has a condemning effect in that we all inwardly know that we don't measure up to the standards of others, the standards of whatever else is out there, or even our own standards. And so it has this crushing effect. When you have this familial relationship with the giver of the law, and you ask the question, not of am I accepted, but what is his heart? What does this mean to him? It's not crushing. It's a gift. And I even said in the sermon, if you look at the life of Jesus, it doesn't lead you to the bare minimum question, what do I do? It can lead you to look at the heart of God behind the law, and sometimes when you do that, you'll be accused of breaking it, such as Jesus healing the hand on the Sabbath.
Right.
This is Jesus deeply knowing the heart of his Father, whose law it is, and being accused by people who approach the law as a transaction of breaking it. So,
cool.
That's where we've been. Yeah.
Yeah. Galatians is a hefty book.
I just told you how I listen to the Cubs, and when you said that, they are sponsored by Hefty Trash Bags.
Hefty Trash Bags.
So they always say, it's a hefty home run by the Cubs.
Hefty home run. It's a hefty Galatians. Sponsored to you by Hefty Garbage Can Bags.
Yeah, maybe that's our new sponsors. Hefty.
It's a hefty faith over breakfast. Yeah, so it's interesting because Galatians and 1 John are two very different letters.
Yep.
And we're kind of looking at the idea that, the sort of the outline so far is that John is sort of presenting really a shorthand version of his gospel.
Yeah.
Because people have been wrestling with what he said in his gospel, and there's things that are happening within the church, of course, because of it. But really his basic argument is, look, like we interacted with God who is divine, or Jesus who's divine and human, and we touched him, we smelled him. And that like true intimate relationship with one another only happens when you're in relationship with Jesus.
Right.
Like when you're in relationship with the fully God, fully man, Jesus, then what you and I have is real.
Yeah.
And it's what we can actually call fellowship And what happens when you enter into that is things move out of the darkness and into the light. You begin these confessional lifestyles, and that's evidence that you have this kind of relationship. And then you begin to love your brother. And so it's sort of operating off that, idea out of John 14. I think it's verse 23 where he talks about, if you love me, you will obey me. And if you obey me, the Father and I will make our home with you. And these are not my words, but these are the words of the Father.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of building off of that. And so this last week we were talking about, he talks about the love of the world and the love of the Father. It's the famous, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of life. But here's the point that I really had never thought about and kind of put out there into our community was this: after the lust of the flesh, that whole part, then he begins to talk about the Antichrist.
Right.
And he gives a whole explanation, and he says the Antichrist is basically a person who denies that the Son is God, basically.
Right.
And so I said, I kind of processed that out because we have whole different sections of people in our community. But I made the argument that if you're a follower of Jesus and you can say he's fully God and fully man and that he's your savior and you don't love your brother, you're an Antichrist. That you and I are Antichrist because it's it's the complete opposite of who Jesus is. And so you may not be saying it, but you are living it. You're living the life of an Antichrist. And so we talked a lot about the thing that really kind of got people is that I sort of we call it parentheses on the passage, because I was doing First John 2, 15 through 25. And so on one end, in verse 24 and 25, he talks about how we need to abide or remain in what we've heard. Right. From the beginning. And that whole idea. So we talked about what it looks like to make a spiritual house. And the more that you build your spiritual house with the Father, the more difficult it is to pull apart from that. You can't just get up and leave it. And so you can stay in the way of Jesus. And then on the other end, we talked about how I use this fishing illustration of when you go fishing and you want to throw the fish back, there's one kind of hook you use versus when you want to catch the fish and keep it. And a lot of times what happens is that we are not very well hooked into the Father. And so it's very easy to pull out the hook and move on to the lust of the flesh. And the illustration this is what I love about our community, is the illustration that built out of that little hook parable that I was giving was this idea that more likely you have the hook of the Father, of your faith, and the hook of the world, and you're being ripped apart and you feel that tension. Yeah. And that's, and we talked a lot about how your affections can't be divided. They're not a commodity you can split up and say, okay, well, I give a little wife affection to your wife and a little wife affection to my wife. And right. These are things that have to be nurtured and can only be in one space. So that was, it was a really good conversation, and I think it shook people up a little bit and made people think about things in ways they hadn't. And I got a lot of responses I didn't expect. So yeah, I think for me the Antichrist one, because a lot of times it's like, oh, that's the Antichrist, or this kind of theology within the churches is denying some aspect of who Jesus is, and that's all true. But in reality, if loving my brother and sister is evidence of me walking with the Father and the Son, then if I'm not doing that, if I'm willing to do that, I'm an Antichrist. I have to begin to think about what I actually believe about Jesus.
This is interesting because in the next section of Galatians 4, Paul talks about turning back, and it's a similar moment, I feel, because he's talking to the Galatian people and how they're going to go adopt these Jewish festivals that they didn't grow up with at all, that these Jewish people are requiring of them. And he's saying, if you go to the Jewish laws, it's just like if you went back to your old ways. It's the same. And that's really a surprising thing to say. But he I've noticed there was the past, say in American religious history, the hellfire and brimstone, Billy Sunday, revivalism, that there has been a rejection of in many ways of saying, don't scare people, don't hold hell out in front of them and say, oh, you're going to go there, or you're going to be a devilish person or whatever. Don't, be more positive. And that's happened in the positive thinking realm, but that's also happened in reformed circles, utilizing the kind of doctrine of eternal security and such. You don't need to say that to people. It doesn't seem like in the Bible that there's this clear distinction that you do one or the other. And here we are in John, and he's talking about Antichrist, and very well maybe talking about some people in the church, right? And here Paul is in Galatians saying, basically saying, look, you're on the verge of turning back. This is absolutely perplexing to me. And he says, as a kind of a pastor in there, have I done all this work for nothing? Look at, what are you doing? And there seems, but Galatians I still think is pretty anchored in who God is and what he's done. But Paul is also not afraid to say, be careful that you don't go off the edge of the cliff. It seems like there's a tension that is very difficult to strike that we're bumping up against in both of these books. Yeah.
And this could bring us to a topic. I just read an interview recently with Stanley Hauerwas.
Oh, I think I read it too.
Is this the one where he talks about how we've sort of shifted the the pastoral roles, and so that they're supposed to be much more
declarative in a way.
Declarative, and really like what you're doing from the pulpit is from up front of people is a much more corrective. It should be a corrective, and it should be
as opposed to kind of what would
they were talking about it being therapeutic.
Like yes. I'm just always here for you.
And their definition of therapeutic and my definition of therapeutic was a little different.
Sure,
I think they were kind of really pushing up against pop psychology.
It was an interesting article. It was, in a way, it was jarring. I felt weird about it, but then at the same time, I very much relate. I thought, why is it that I want to be able to just be a little more able to just say, hey, look, this is where you fall off the bridge. You shouldn't do that. As opposed to being just the person who is just always there. Okay, no matter what you've done, I'll be there for you. I'll just,
Right.
There was an interesting tension I felt of relating to it and going, "Is this okay? Is it okay that I feel that way?" How did you respond?
Well, I kind of Stanley is not usually that way.
No, it was very out of character, and
I thought so too.
But maybe
I think it was coming out of some of his own frustrations with people,
right?
But I think he's right to a degree. I think there is a parental role to being a pastor. And when I think about relating with my children, there are, on a regular basis, I am required to be directive and firm,
right?
And create boundaries. And in other places, I am required to be soft and gentle and kind and playful. And that's the role of a parent. It's like I'm guiding you into adulthood. And in some ways, as a pastor, my job is to say, I'm guiding you into
spiritual maturity,
to learning how to move into the house with the Son and the Father. Like I'm teaching you how to where to put your couch and how to.
If I'm preparing you to eternally live on your parents' couch, i.e., my couch,
right?
That's not good,
right?
Yeah.
The other thing that I think I have been struck with, and I don't know if it was in this article, but I do think that I think the pandemic has done some of this. But I think we've lost I do not think the American church in particular, but maybe I don't know about the foreign church, but the American church, we don't understand evangelism, and we're terrified of it. And we've messed it up so much in a sense that we don't know what it looks like to live a life on mission, like in every aspect. That like I go home and I'm a missionary. I go outside and talk to my neighbor and I'm a missionary. I come to church and I'm a missionary. I go to work and I'm a missionary. And I'm doing it in a way that is always inviting people to experience Jesus either in word or deed. And it's a mission. Like it's all. There's nothing else in life. That is what you do. and everything else comes in under submission to the mission of Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think from preaching that's important, that we've come to a point where we feel like maybe we're competing with the pop psychology or the most recent way of handling your life, and or we feel like we need to be teaching doctrine to the point where we get everybody well grounded and they need to just know what they're standing firm on, and so we're not actually speaking to their hearts at all. And so we get confused up front, I think, sometimes as to what we're supposed to be doing. And shepherding is really getting people back on mission.
Right.
We're supposed to be on mission. If it's a little bit of structure in the doctrine to help people understand why they're on mission, or to challenge their
practice, right?
Their practices, or their
or their affections.
Yes, their affections.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's part of what that's what we're about, and sometimes I forget that.
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
And I think, I hope that my hope for my community is that we will get to this place more where we're like, oh yeah, the village is about this mission.
Yeah.
Mission is about the mission. You guys have it in double. And that's it. Like, everything is about that. My rest is about that.
Yeah.
It's what I'm about.
Yeah, it's an interesting, and that is part of the DNA we want to share, is we are a people that have always been given a mission, and without it, we weren't just given beliefs, right? And I've been saying, and I hope it's helpful, that there's two great commissions. There's the one given at creation. I mean, people were created with a mission. What are they supposed to do? They're supposed to be fruitful and multiply. They're supposed to fill the earth and subdue it. There's supposed to be a development of the created world, right? That's a mission. They had something to do. People have always had something to do. And then your affection is aimed at God, and that has your rest and your Sabbath has to do with that. But it also fuels you for the mission, which is really about God and who he is, and living out of that creational ideal that you are a creator, as is he. When you sit and you reflect on the fact that he has created all things good, it fuels you to go forward and to create, right? So, and then there's, of course, in Jesus, we are given go, right, into the world, make disciples, teach them everything I've commanded you. And so it's really critical that we have and see and remain on our mission. When we cease to be on those missions, our status as the people of God is, validly questioned, right? Yeah.
Yes, and one of the things that I've had the privilege of getting to preach with my wife twice. That was a couple of weeks ago. So, because I had 3 weeks off. So before that, she and I preached twice, or 3 times in a row. I don't remember. Anyway, it was 3 times in a row we preached. And we preached on the gospel. Yeah, and we talked about how the kingdom is about hospitality. The kingdom of God, the mission is a hospitable mission in the sense that we're welcoming people into the kingdom experience, and that how hospitality tends to be something that is not always what we want to do. It inconveniences us. Right. People eat our food. People sit at our table. People borrow our car.
We have to clean up after them.
That's right. People take our time. People take our affection. Yeah. And we want to protect those in America. And we have this big thing about boundaries.
Yeah, we're fair. Yeah.
And we all have
and that was a correction.
Or too many boundaries, right? Yeah.
I was going to say that I don't want to down on all boundaries, but we've taken it so far to be basically anytime you inconvenience me or I don't want you around, I'm making my boundaries. Yeah.
Right. Well, and we have a lot of, I think one of the wells, or the kind of, to use the Jeremiah 2:13 thing, the broken cisterns of our culture, our Christianity is, I worked hard today and I deserve rest.
Yes.
I deserve the TV. I deserve
Yeah.
the food. I deserve the movie. Whatever
Yeah.
it is, I deserve it because it's too much. It was too much
Yeah.
out there. So to have someone come over to my house and eat, or come over and have a cup of coffee, or come over and just talk about what's going on in their life, or going over to their place and helping them fix their plumbing, that's an inconvenience.
Yeah.
And I don't have the energy for that. And Jesus really isn't. He's not living with me. He's not sustaining me. He's not giving me the strength. I'm not resting in him while working all day. So I have nothing. Now, I'm not saying you. I mean, I think
the resting in him while working all day. That's really key, isn't it?
it is.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
But and that's. I mean, I believe in Sabbath, and I mean, I think we have a hard time taking Sabbath too because we have a hard time not accomplishing things. When you
Right.
if you sit and you are resting, you're doing things that are restful, you begin to have a bit of anxiety stirring up because you begin to realize how out of control everything is.
Yeah, that's the scary part of silence and rest, right? Is you kind of recognize how much you can't do it. And so to keep moving, I joked with a guy who was living in our little guest suite, as he had been to, he went to Redemption Church on Saturday and went to Cross and Crown in the morning, and he said something about, do you ever go to Redemption and Cross and Crown on Sunday? And I said, no. I said, I rest. And kind of just giving him a hard time. But there's, even in our religious, I think taking in all the podcasts, all the stuff, we are just deadly afraid of just sitting, right? What is it? I mean, I'm not saying because I don't go to these churches on Sunday mornings that I'm more restful. I'm not.
Right.
But there is this, even in our religious version, we just can't just sit.
No, it's hard. I mean, I think I take Mondays off. Monday is my day off. And I do some enjoyable things with my wife, and but a lot of it is actually anxiety producing.
Right.
Because I'm not doing anything for church.
Right.
I'm
you have to trust God with all those things actually on that day, right?
Right. And if church invades, and as a pastor, sometimes your day off, it gets invaded.
Right.
And then it produces another set of anxieties because I'm like, well, all this, I can only do a tiny bit to keep it afloat so that I can have my day off, and then I've got to take care of it tomorrow. But so there's a lot of being out of control.
Yeah.
And what I find is I don't actually say, oh, God, let me just give you this on my day off. It's not mine. It's yours. I don't need to fix it. I don't need to handle it. I don't need it. It'll wait. But sometimes I'm like,
One of the most beautiful things about this last vacation, and I've been trying to learn to do this, is to just utterly renounce. I am not going to do anything, work related while I'm gone. I don't take the computer at all. And that's very hard to do. And sometimes you get the phone call you got to take, right?
Right.
Of course. But there is something about having to really place it in the hands of God and say, you know better than me what people need. My presence here is not the key factor in people's lives. I am not the savior of my church or my whatever, right? You are, so I can be. And there's almost a resistance in going on a true vacation.
Yeah.
And the remote work thing worries me in this department. I think people, I hear people going, well, yeah, I can go on more trips with my family because I can work on the trip. It's like,
that's not really
that's
a vacation.
not vacation.
No.
Yeah. It's just you're a traveling salesman now.
Yeah.
And it concerns me that we're getting worse at that, not better.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I would agree with you. Yeah. So rest, it's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the dependency on God is what, as a pastor, I need to model and invite people to do.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting to me that, yes, we live in a world 2,000 years after Jesus where the way into the kingdom is to believe, is to accept some things.
Right.
You have to accept that Jesus is God. You have to accept that he died for your sins. You have to be willing to follow in what you understand to be the things that he says.
Being a disciple is, are you saying like being a disciple is kind of just the checklist of beliefs, the way that we present it?
Well,
basically?
I'm just saying that's the initial way, but
Right.
ultimately, how do I know I'm a follower of Jesus?
Right.
By the practices
Yeah.
and by the way I interact.
The way to imagine this would be in the ancient days when Jesus walked the earth, how would you know that you were a follower of Jesus? Would it be that you believed he existed, that you believed that, God, there was a Trinity and stuff, but when he walked through your town, you were too busy to follow him? Probably not. The way that you knew that you followed Jesus, you probably could have had all sorts of misdirected thoughts and beliefs, but if you were willing to actually follow him, listen to him, sit with him, that would be more important.
Right.
And you would be shaped, truly shaped by Jesus.
Right.
Right.
And then sent out by him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know we're meandering, but here's another idea so I have always had this sort of toying with the Pentecostal world. I love the Pentecostal world. And I there's something that they have.
Did you grow up in it?
No.
See, I did. That's yeah.
No, I have been I've been around different parts of it in my life. I really love theologically sound Pentecostals.
Yeah.
So I like people like Gordon Fee,
Yeah.
like who believe in the true expression of the gifts.
Andy Crouch is another example of that.
Andy Crouch. Yeah. I love these guys.
Yeah.
But when I begin to read the stories and think about, there is something to this devotion and that Pentecostals have at times with Jesus, where they're just committed wholeheartedly to the singing, to the preaching, to the practice. And they hear words of God, right? There's a lot of leaders in these places hear audible words of God. And I was listening to one that just really challenged me in this whole hospitality idea, in that she's in Texas, very powerful woman in the business world, yada, yada. Her husband, she wasn't a Christian. She hears this audible voice saying, build my temple. She's like, what do you mean? I don't even know what that is, and I don't know why I'm hearing voices.
Right.
She starts going to church. She becomes a Christian. She gets discipled. She's a very theologically sound person. But what she hears and what her husband hears is that they need to open their house 4 times a week and begin to just sing and pray and turn it into a house of prayer. So they have this tiny little house. Yeah. They open it up, and for like 3 years, it turns into a church. Yeah. They don't do any announcing. Right. They just open up. They had hundreds of cars parked in their neighborhood, and just people would just start come flooding in to sing and to pray. Right. And eventually they had a cease and desist order nailed to their door. It got so crazy. And then they planted a church. But I thought, I want to be, I don't know if I want to hear audible voices, but I do want to be in a place where I'm like, I'm willing to open up my house 4 times a week if that's what God asked me to do. And just pray and sing and care for whoever shows up at my house. I want to do that. Yeah. I want to be there, I think, is the big part. Yeah. But anyway, that's just another side thing for everything.
No, that's good. Yeah. Well, we probably better wrap it up. I think. Yes. We started early, so I don't know how long we've been at this, but anyway, it's
44 minutes.
Oh, that's about right.
Yeah, perfect.
Hey, man. Well, good to be with you.
It's
good to see you. Good to be back. And just a reminder: if you want one of these double shipped signed books, and you don't go to Mission, you don't go to the Village, email faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com, and also let us know something you'd like us to talk about.
Right.
And we appreciate you joining us. If you have the time, and you do, let's be honest, you have it. if you could give us a rating,
Yes.
that would mean a ton.
Give us a rating.
It makes a big difference.
And
in
make a
people finding
comment.
us.
Yeah.
Make
Put
a
a comment. That's a big deal, too.
Put a picture of yourself in the rating with a big thumbs up. I don't know
Yeah.
if you can do that or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's helpful. That's a big deal.
It is
That
really helpful.
that makes here's our dream. This is the dream. I'm just going to be honest.
Put the dream out there.
The dream is that we could actually, pay somebody to help us edit this thing, and it wouldn't just be a total time cut out of our pastoral schedules.
Yeah.
That we could have these conversations, share them with you, bring in a little money to pay for the thing. That's the dream.
That's the dream.
Yeah.
So if you enjoy us, and then email us. Start telling us you listen.
We just want to grow it a little bit so that we can have a valid shot at that dream.
A valid shot. That's like we're... Oh,
anyway,
goodness.
Appreciate you all listening. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.
All right. You've been listening to Faith Over Breakfast with Pastor Eric Siepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. Please share us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you.